All rise.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay, we'll ask for the calling of the roll, please. Sorry? Ask for the calling of the roll, please.
Mayor Eady,
Present.
Reeve Eman, Councillor Koulis, Councillor Evans, Councillor Hines,
Present.
Councillor Jameson,
Present.
and Councillor Sidney.
Present.
Mayor Eady, we have quorum.
Thank you. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest on the general nature thereof?
Yes, I have some.
Pardon me?
I do. On item number B4, the Town Hall project update.
B4?
Yep. Yep, that's right.
Okay. Looks like a pretty big agenda, but I think it'll go pretty quickly. First motion being that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held September 13th, 2022 be adopted as printed. Mover, please. Councillor Jemison, second by Councillor Hines. Questions or comments on the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor? That's carried. Whereas the Royal Canadian Legion have asked the towns and cities, schools, businesses, and churches and citizens of Canada to stop for 2 minutes at 11 a.m. on November the 11th and pay a special tribute to the 116,000 Canadians who have given their lives in war to defend Canada. Be resolved that Renfrew Town Council support for the 2-minute wave of silence and encourage the public to participate in a moment of silent reflection on November the 11th at 11 a.m. Moved by Councillor Sidney, second by Councillor Hines. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor? It's carried, thank you. The Renfrew Town Council approved the request from downtown Renfrew BIA to close Raglan Street South from Opyonga Road to Monroe Avenue and Railway Avenue from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. for the Miracle on Renfrew Street and Stationary Parade on December 3rd, and direct staff to work with necessary agencies to authorize the street closure. Furthermore, the Renfrew Town Council authorized the downtown Renfrew BIA to occupy Low Square on December 3rd, 2022. Mover, please. Councillor Sidney, second by Councillor Jamieson. Again, any questions? Hearing none. All in favor? It's carried.
Sorry, Your Worship, could I just go back there? I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Sorry about that. I just want to say that Councillor Sidney and I were just having a discussion, and we're not quite sure whether it's going to be a stationary parade or the parade that is actually a parade that goes down the street. So I'm sure there will be further information coming on that. Councillor Sidney is following up with the representative of the BIA, so that will be coming forward, I'm sure, soon.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next notice being that that the notice regarding amendments to procedural bylaw 34-2011 as amended be received. Mover, please. Councillor Sidney, second by Councillor Hines. Again, any questions or comments?
If I could add,
Yes.
Your Worship, it's just something being looked at by the Clerk's Department. We're looking at doing a few amendments to the procedural bylaw, and we're just, as part of our current procedural bylaw, we need to give notice, so that should be coming at a future council meeting for your consideration. And essentially, the changes will just look to implement our new hybrid structure for electronic meetings, and also look to streamline the way that we do our council meetings and change up the agenda order a bit in order to have our meetings run as efficiently as possible.
Okay. Anything else? Hearing nothing. The CAO Trombley's report dated September 23rd, 2022 regarding the Town Hall project be received. A mover, please. Councillor Hines, second by Councillor Sidney. Turned over to CAO Tremblay, maybe for the report. If you could hear me there?
I believe we tested, and I'm just gonna confirm everybody can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So just an overview of this report, you'll know that this project was approved in the 2022 budget, and we're kind of back on track. There is an ad hoc committee that was formed to help guide the work for this specific project. We've met twice over the summer, and also architectural services were awarded. Just to the council chambers, and in keeping with the recent technological improvements and ensuring those are in place. The other part of the project is reutilizing the space that was formerly used by the courts on the second floor. One of the rooms next to the council chambers we're looking to redeploy as a counselor's office where counselors can pick up their mail, plug in for meetings or check in. But the remainder of the space would be a boardroom that can be used for committees, but also closed session. But again, for 2022, the focus will be getting the OPP in that space, the roof and the HVAC in the former OPP detachment, and then just the aesthetic improvements to the council chambers. What we'll do for the 2023 budget is come back with a detailed budget on the remaining items and also the schedule for those. And that also includes any improvements to Low Square. Those would be considered as part of the 2023 budget. But we did also receive a grant for a ramp at the front of the building, and that will form part of that project as well. But again, will be considered as part of the 2023 budget. So if there are any other, if there are questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer them.
Councillor Sidney.
Thank you. I just want to say it's an impressive layout that you guys have done. I'm super excited to see the ramp come to the front and very pleased with the 2 barrier-free washrooms. So kudos to the designer, and I'm looking forward to see what it looks like. So thank you.
Okay. Now, we have a wee bit of a problem here. We don't have quorum to pass this motion.
If I can interject, the Municipal Act allows you to go below quorum as long as you have no fewer than 2. So you're down to 3, but you're fine from when a declaration of interest is declared.
So we can go ahead and
Yes,
pass
you
the
can.
motions then. Okay, based on 3 people. Okay, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Oh, no, there's more here yet.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes, yep. You have this one?
Yeah. The Renfrew Town Council direct the Chief Administrative Officer and staff to negotiate leases with the tenants, and report back to council, and further that the CAO delegated authority to approve for any capital purchases within the allocated budget and scope of the project for the remainder of 2022. Mover, please. Councillor Hines, second by Councillor Sidney. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, we're okay now.
Apologies, I got stuck on a phone call.
No problem. Okay, the CAO Trombley's report dated September 23rd, 2022 regarding the strategic plan process outline be received. Mover, please. Councillor Sidney, second by Councillor Hines. Again, I'll turn it over to CAO Trombley for the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So both my goals and objectives, I sound like a broken record at this point, but it's important. My goals and objectives and the work plan the council subsequently approved last meeting speak to the strategic plan. The strategic plan is a really important document in terms of the work that we do as the staff team supporting council and their policy role, but also in terms of us as a community and moving forward. So the work plan did speak to some of these timelines. The goal is to really do some foundational work before the new council takes office, so that we can kind of rock and roll once they're here, and that we can have a fully realized plan by May. And you'll see from the schedule here, there's kind of the typical elements, which are some strategies that flow from that. But we also have to do some groundwork in terms of our mission, which is what do we do, vision, where are we going, and then land with some key performance indicators that we can use to measure our success and our progress. The process includes a number of report backs to staff, to council, from staff, but also some significant community consultation as well, with a community survey, interviews with key stakeholders, and a public open house. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. But again, the new council will be able to shape the process, but this is an outline of how we intend to achieve this important task.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The Renfrew Town Council approved the proposed strategic planning process subject to review by the next council and 2023 budgetary approval of any items requiring funding. Mover, please. Councillor Hines, seconded by Rivimo. Again, any further questions? Hearing none. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. The Treasurer Broom's report dated September 13, 2022 regarding the COVID-19 vaccination clinics at Mattaway Centre be received. Mover, please. Councillor Jamison, second by Councillor Sidney. Okay. Turn over to Treasurer Broom for the report.
Thank you, Mayor Eady. It was discussed at the Finance Committee meeting on September 22nd that during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was essential that residents of Renfrew County be able to receive COVID vaccinations in a timely fashion. Renfrew Victoria Hospital required a place that they could issue the vaccinations with space that they could lay out their clinic in a spacious manner, and requested that they use Mattaway Activity Centre. The vaccination clinic was held during the months of May, June, and July of 2021 and was for the betterment of the community, and we received a tremendous response in the usage of the clinic. Through delegated authority, CAO Trombley has approved a one-time grant to offset the outstanding receivable for the hall rental at Mattaway. Staff recommends that Council fund the cost of the hall rental at Mattaway Activity Centre to be recorded similar to the grants to organizations to show the donation made to Renfrew Victoria Hospital, and that the Parks and Rec Department recognize the hall rental revenue. Funding to offset this grant may possibly come from the 2021 surplus or unallocated reserves. due to the timing of our year-end being incomplete, we can backdate this to 2021, just in case you're wondering about the dating of that. Therefore, the recommendation to council is to simply take note that CAO Tremblay has approved this through his delegated authority during the restricted acts period from the beginning of nomination day. Any questions?
Okay, questions, comments? Hearing none. Just to comment on it myself personally, the hospital and that particular group of people that were responsible for the vaccines done an absolutely outstanding job. And it was really, really nice to see that the town of Renfrew could partner into that and be part of all this process. And without their dedication and their loyalty and the extra hours, et cetera, they put in, a lot of people in the town of Renfrew might not be as well off as they are today, health-wise. So I just, I don't know if anybody would be listening from the hospital group, but I'd just like to give you a personal thanks for what you did. It was a tremendous effort. Okay. Okay, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. The Treasurer Broom's report dated September 15th, 2022 regarding grants to organizations be received. Mover, please. Councillor Hines, second by Revimo. Turn over to Treasurer Broom again for a report.
Thank you, Mayor Eady. The Finance Committee reviewed the grants to organizations request at its meeting on April 20th, 2022, and confirmed that allocations to Heritage Renfrew, Hospice Renfrew, RCAF Wing, the Royal Canadian Legion, and it was noted at the time of that meeting that the Golden Age Activity Centre and Renfrew and Area Seniors Home Support had not sent in their requests. The Golden Age Activity Centre has a memorandum of understanding with the town of Renfrew, which expired on December 31st, 2021. In June, we received a letter requesting a renewal of their existing 5-year MOU, and at the Finance Committee meeting on September 22nd, it was agreed upon to renew the MOU based on the previous annual commitment of $10,675. The Renfrew and Area Seniors Home Support also provided a letter of request in June for $5,000. In 2021, they received $1,500 based on a request of $3,000. The Finance Committee recommends that a donation of $1,500 be made in 2022. Also, the BIA submitted a request for donation on September 14th, 2022 via email to the Mayor and members of Council requesting $2,000 to offset the costs of the Santa Claus Parade. The Finance Committee recommends a donation of $1,000 in 2022. Funding for these grants to organizations is included in the 2022 budget in the amount of $19,000. Any questions?
Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. The Renfrew Town Council approves the following 2022 grants to organizations. Heritage Renfrew, $1,500. Hospice Renfrew, $750. RCAF 433 Champlain Wing, $1,000. Royal Canadian Legion Branch 148, $1,000. Renfrew and Area Seniors Home Support, $1,500. And a Santa Claus Parade, $1,000. Mover, please. Councillor Jamieson, second by Councillor Sidney. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. The Renfrew Town Council approve a contribution to the Golden Age Activity Centre in the amount of $10,675, similar to the previous memorandum of understanding with staff directing to bring forward an updated agreement as part of the 2023 budget. Mover, please. Revimo, second by Councillor Jamieson. Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. The Renfrew Town Council directs staff to review the grants to organizations program, including policy framework and the memorandums of understanding as part of the 2023 budget process. Okay, moved by Councillor Hines, second by Councillor Sidney. Again, any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. The Treasurer Broom's report dated September 23rd, 2022 regarding vendor disqualification and procurement policies be received. Mover, please. Councillor Jemison, second by Reeve Emo. Again, we'll turn it over to Treasurer Broom for report.
I'm going to ask that CAO Tremblay assist me with this report because he was a big part of preparing this policy, and he utilized it in Whitewater region, so he has a little bit more information on it than I do, if we could.
That's just fine, thank you. CEO Tremblay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so the purchasing policy had been reviewed a number of times by Finance Committee. What we did is just did further due diligence to clarify in terms of the advertising piece, the delegation of authority, and the limits there. But essentially, those were the changes that were done since the last draft, and Finance Committee reviewed that. The vendor disqualification policy is rather new. I know I've heard since I've joined the town we've had some concerns with some quality of work. And a municipality can go through a vendor disqualification, but needs a process and a policy to do that. So what this policy does is sets out a series of criteria that can be used if disqualification is in order, and sets out a clear kind of policy framework to guide that. Both the procurement policy was in the CAO's goals and objectives for 2022-2023. But I just want to say the bulk of this work was done by Treasurer O'Reilly and Treasurer Broom, and we're just bringing it across the line. But the vendor disqualification policy is new, but I think provides due diligence on the town's part that if we're not satisfied with the services or goods we're being provided, that there is a mechanism to disqualify a vendor for a period of time. So if there are any specific questions, I'd be happy to assist.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Hines.
Sorry, Your Worship, thank you. I just have a comment, and I know that at the Finance Committee we reviewed this cover to cover, and there were a couple places that we requested some additional wordage, and that would be on page 5. I'm very happy to see that when it comes to the team that are in charge of opening the bids and with representation from department heads, treasury, and clerk, that also the CAO, mayor, and members of council may also participate. I think that's a very important part that has been added in there, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Anything else? Revimo.
Thank you. And again, I really like what I see. I have a quick question. My understanding is and I can't remember the exact act, but about 4 years ago it changed, and it speeds up the payment process for municipalities. And I believe that it became fairly commonplace across the industry for some kind of a final inspection and a sign-off, and I don't see that in this procurement policy. Am I mistaken, or is there another mechanism for that?
I'm not aware of that, but I can follow up. If it's in law, regardless if it's in policy, we must follow it. But any specifics that you might have, we would take that back. I'm assuming, is that in terms of any holdbacks on major projects, or?
Yes, my impression is that the legislation at the time talked about once the final bill was submitted, you had 30 days to pay it, and at the time we were concerned about holdbacks and work not being completed and there seemed to be a hammer in that legislation that you must pay at 30 days after, and there was always a dispute about what constitutes a final inspection. So it may have resolved itself over the years from 4 or 5 years ago, but I don't recall that.
Yeah, we'll take it back and review, and if amendments are required, but I think we speak generally about holdbacks and payments, and also an accounts payable policy should be developed and should speak to some of those elements in terms of payments as well, but we'll take that back and do a further review.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? All in favor? It's carried, thank you. The bylaw 88-2022 being a bylaw to adopt a procurement policy be read a first time and deemed to have been read a second time. Mover, please. Councillor Sidney, second by Councillor Hines. And again, any further questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, my
Yes.
apology. I just wanted to note that an appendix to the purchasing policy includes a capital project detail sheet. There was a request that for major items that feedback is provided to committee on the progress. So the first page of the sheet would be utilized for any capital item over 20,000. And on the second side would be the form that's filled out for any major capital over 100,000, so that detailed updates on any change orders, but also finance and capital costs get reported through committee. So that was also on the to-do list and is included in this policy. So I neglected to mention it, but it is contained as Schedule D, Appendix D to the policy, and we'll be using that going forward, starting with the 2023 budget.
Thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. The bylaw 88-2022 being a bylaw to adopt a procurement policy be read a third time and be passed. Mover, please. Reid Beaman, second by Councillor Jemison. Again, any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. The bylaw 89-2022 being a bylaw to adopt a vendor disqualification policy be read a first time and deemed to have been read a second time. Mover, please. Councillor Hines, seconded by Councillor Sidney. Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Oh, sorry, Reid Beaman.
Thank you. Section 1.1, where it talks about the frivolous or vexatious litigation, does there have to be a finding, or is that on the basis of a recommendation to council as a criteria for making that kind of decision?
Yeah, we wouldn't just rely on that solely. We would have to go through the other questions through this process. And as the Reeve knows, frivolous and vexation is very difficult to prove. But if it is a vendor that we're in constant litigation with, that's where we would look at this. But I should just say that we would use this policy with caution, and we would ensure that all the steps are followed before a recommendation is made.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Hearing nothing, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. The Director of Corporate Services, Clerk Bowman's report dated September 23rd regarding reserve and reserve fund policy, investment policy, and creation of aquatics reserve fund be received. Mover, please. Councillor Hines, second by Councillor Sidney. Turn over to Corporate Services, Clerk Bowman.
Thank you, Mayor Eady, members of council. Tonight before you, we have essentially three different policy or establishment of reserve fund matters. The first being bylaw 84-2022, which is bylaw to adopt a reserve and reserve fund policy. Bylaw 86-2022 to adopt an investment policy. And finally, for town council, looking for support for the establishment of an aquatics reserve fund through the passage of bylaw 87-22. Obviously, the primary importance of policies is to establish consistent principles, standards, and guidelines for the maintenance, in this case, reserves and reserve funds, to ensure the integrity of the town's investment management process as it relates to investment policy, and to establish the aquatics reserve fund. You'll see in the reserve and reserve fund policy there are appendices or tables, if you will, in the form of obligatory and discretionary reserves, and also then a summary of reserves, reserve funds and a summary of reserves. Those will be, I guess, propagated and detailed more during annual budget reporting by the treasurer, but it does put in the framework and the framework and the guidelines to how we're going to note the different reserves and reserve funds the town has. When it comes to the investment policy, that is a direct, requirement rising out of one of our current investments, and that being a mutual fund investment that we got through some bequeath funds. It also allows the town to look at its overall investment strategy and to take measures that, while adhering to statutory requirements and the preservation of capital, gives us more, I guess, leeway in looking at some competitive rates of return and looking at other investment opportunities. That's sometimes more the case when you do have reserve funds that have some longevity as far as potential use. It could be many years out, the window of horizon to span. So this is a statutory requirement under the Municipal Act and Regulation 438/97, and it does allow the town to, with a standard of care, to look at some investment strategies, and it does provide for annual reporting back to council, a statement of performance, if you will. And I guess finally on this report is the reserve fund itself that we wanted to create, and this is something the council is quite familiar with, as it's been spoken to a few times over the course of the year, and that is derived from some bequeath funds that the town was generously given from the estate of the late Janet Wilson. These funds, although no agreement with it, they were certainly, it was communicated through the executor that her passion was aquatics. She did serve on the aquatics committee, the not-for-profit group, and was very passionate about seeing some aquatic center built in Renfrew at some point in time. So these funds, it took several months in working with the executor, but they were officially in our hands, I think, in the early part of summer. And we did report on them in closed session at the time. And now this formally establishes an aquatic reserve fund. This fund is established to support capital and operating requests for the purpose of advancing aquatic infrastructure and programs in the town of Renfrew. The treasurer is authorized to administer and manage this fund in accordance with the provisions of the aforementioned reserves and reserve fund policy and our investment policy. I think, notwithstanding any questions, I will make public the amount. It is part of the bylaw, the amount that was bequeathed and that has been placed in this fund, and that will be reported on an annual basis as part of our annual reserve and reserve fund reporting, is $331,278.94. So it's currently in an investment vehicle with our chartered bank, and will be again reported on as part of annual reporting of reserve and reserve funds.
Yep. Any questions? Okay, Councillor Sidney, and Councillor Hines.
Thank you. It's more of a statement. I think this is a nice direction moving forward. I know the aquatics and pool discussion has been going on for what seems to be centuries, but thanks to the late Jane Wilson and her family for this great bequeath. It moves Renfrew that much more closer to achieving a goal of aquatics facility in the future. And I think it's important to note that the town is taking it seriously, and that money is going to be locked into an actual aquatics fund, that it's not going to be dispersed elsewhere. So it is secured and is earmarked solely for aquatics. So I think that's a great thing, and I think we're moving in the right direction. And again, thank you to the late Ms. Wilson and her family.
Okay, Councillor Hines.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. This is certainly a good news story for the town of Renfrew, and I'm happy to see this letter as a public document tonight. The letter that was from Jan is her name, Jan Wilson's brother, James Wilson, and we received that back in March, and we had dealt with it, or had it read to us in camera, and then had to do some research on how to accept that money in the form that it had been in, but to have 331,278.94 is a big shot in the arm for the town of Renfrew, and especially for aquatics. So as I said, I'm very happy to see that letter there. The original letter we had provided to us in camera did say on the top of it, for public record, and Mr. Wilson was quite concerned that indeed the public would know the amount, and that Jan, who was a longtime resident of Renfrew and very interested in pool and swimming for all ages, was able to provide this amount when she passed away. I just want to say that, it's heartwarming to see this, because now certainly the pool committee that have been around for a very long time, they have incorporated, and they are managers of the Ruth Burwell Fund, and they tell me that they're at 160,000. It was at 160,000 and now has moved to 172,000 with a recent donation of $12,000. So combining these two, it does look like a bright future, that some planning could be done for a pool. And again, thank you to Jen Wilson, who has such a passion for this, and for her brother for noting this in a letter to us, that how important the direction of that money is towards an aquatic facility. So thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? Vimo.
Just to make sure I fully understand this, so this bequest will go into a reserve. The reserve is governed by a bylaw, if I'm not mistaken, and as such, the only way funds can be moved out of it is to repeal the bylaw, or to amend the bylaw when, in the future? Can I get just some clarity on that for myself, please?
Yeah, that's correct. This is a reserve fund created by bylaw. Council, in order to close or amend, must do so through bylaw itself. The closure reserve fund, the disposition of any remaining funds, et cetera, would have to come back through council at the time. It isn't a trust fund that maybe some are familiar with. It is a reserve fund that has a purpose statement. And again, that's at council's discretion how it manages that going forward.
Thank you, if I might. So, and just to refresh my memory as well, so there is proper notice for a bylaw when there's a change, or to repeal it entirely.
Yeah, I would certainly suggest so, and I think what council will see is on an annual basis, if not more so during some financial reporting, is, this listing of all obligatory and discretionary funds and reserves, and it will be more clearly identified with purposes, and council will have an illustrated summary as appended to the reserve and reserve fund policy that they can certainly examine and use to manage.
Thank you. I think that's the level of accountability that we've all sought in the last little while, and transparency as we've wrestled with getting this bequest into the public domain, but also at the same time making sure that it was protected for the purpose it was given. So thank you.
Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor? It's carried, thank you. The bylaw 84-2022, being a bylaw to adopt a reserve and reserve fund policy, be read a first time and deemed to have been read a second time. Mover, please. Councillor Hines, second by Councillor Jamison. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. The bylaw 84-2022, being a bylaw to adopt a reserves and reserve fund policy, be read a third time and be passed. Mover, please. Sorry. Councillor Sidney, second by Vimo. And any further questions? Just, we've talked about a reserve fund policy for some time now, and it's very important. It's very important because you can have a reserve fund that builds up over a period of time, and then you really don't need to keep putting the same amount of money into it. So it allows you to move things around a wee bit and be a little more creative with our investments and this type of thing. So this is a good policy to have, and I say at the same time, it being the first time round for reserve fund policy, there may be amendments down the road or whatever, or changes, but that's fine. At least it's a good start. Anything else? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Okay. The bylaw 86-2022 being a bylaw to adopt an investment policy be read a first time and deemed to have been read a second time. Mover, please. Councillor Jamieson, second by Councillor Hines. Again, any further questions? Hearing none. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The bylaw 86-2022 being a bylaw to adopt an investment policy be read a third time and be passed. The mover, please. Councillor Hines, second by Reeve Emo. Any last questions? Hearing none. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. The bylaw 87-2022 being a bylaw to establish an aquatics reserve fund be read a first time and deemed to be read a second time. Second moved by Councillor Sidney, second by Councillor Hines. Any further questions? Hearing none. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Bylaw 87-2022 being a bylaw to establish an aquatics reserve fund be read a third time and be passed. Councillor Hines, seconded by Revimo. Last chance for questions. Hearing none. All in favor? Thank you. The Treasurer Broom's report dated September 20th, 2022 regarding GICs be received. Mover, please. Councillor Sidney, second by Councillor Hines. Turn over to Treasurer Broom for another report.
Thank you, Mayor Eady and members of council. During the Finance Committee meeting on September 22nd, it was discussed that the Stewart Bequest GIC had expired in May of 2022, and that there are currently funds sitting in savings accounts earning interest at a rate of prime less 1.6%, which currently that rate is 3.85%. The Stewart Bequest account currently has a balance of $77,354.90, which includes the expired GIC, and the Swimming Pool Trust account currently has a balance of $54,138.87. I am seeking council's approval to invest these funds in either a 12 or 18-month fixed rate, non-redeemable GIC to earn interest at a rate of 4.6% for a 12-month GIC or 4.9% for an 18-month GIC. Depending on the requirements of the funds will determine the length of the term for the GICs. Sorry, I believe I might have made an error in the Swimming Pool Trust account. Now that I'm looking back at my report, I think that should have been 34,000. Regardless, we've got money sitting in Stewart Bequest and Swimming Pool Trust accounts that I believe to earn a little bit more interest, we could place them in a GIC because we're not currently utilizing these funds for anything. So I feel that in order to achieve a little bit more interest, we could place them in a GIC rather than just a savings account.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this? Hearing none? No.
That's okay, I'll just
Okay.
share that with you. I don't think you need to say that. Yeah.
4.9 for 18 months is pretty good right now. I've been checking some of my own stuff. I don't have quite as much money as the town, but I'm not getting anywhere close to that. Okay, all in favor? It's carried, thank you. The council authorized the treasurer to transfer funds into a fixed rate, non-redeemable GIC to earn interest at a higher rate than we are currently receiving on our savings account. Mover, please. BMO, second by Councillor Sidney. Again, any further questions? Councillor Sidney, then Councillor Hines.
Just wanting to know if the treasurer is looking for direction from council on whether it's 12 or 18 months? Or do you make that call?
I believe with CAO Tremblay and myself, we would make that decision together. I think it all kind of depended on what was occurring with the rec center in order to place the funds in either a 12 or an 18-month GIC.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Hines.
Just a comment, I think that's great that we're going to be looking to those two funds, the Stewart Bequest Fund and the Swimming Pool Trust Fund that came out of the original arena pool building or complex or project that was to go on. So when you add all of those things up with the bequest from Jan Wilson, the money that the pool committee holds being $172,000 and the 37,000 that we're going to, 37 some, that we're going to invest, we're talking about $500,000 there. So certainly a good news story for the town of Renfrew, and I think a great move to invest that money where we can make a little more interest on it. So good job on doing that.
Anything else? Hearing none. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. That the minutes of the town facilities received ad hoc committee meeting dated August 26th and September 22nd, 2022 be received. Mover, please. BMO, second by Councillor Hines. I chair that committee, but I believe CAO Tremblay has given a pretty good report on what's gone forth with the ad hoc committee, so I don't think there's any reason to go over this and talk about the same thing we just talked about. Everybody okay with that, or? Okay. Any questions or comments on it? Hearing none, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you. That the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting held or dated April the 20th, 2020, and 25th, 2022, and September 22nd, 2022 be received. Mover, please. Councillor Hines, second by BMO. Okay. Go back to the one on the 20th of April. I'm not going to go into any detail. We had talked about the grants to organizations, which we've went ahead and passed tonight. We talked about capital budget reserves, and again, that's been talked about again tonight. So there's really nothing else on that one to discuss unless there's questions on that meeting. Okay, hearing none, then we have the April 25th. We did have our Chief Librarian Kelly Thompson come and discuss her payroll budget. And we talked about the procurement policy back that time, and we did talk about the payroll and operating budgets that particular time as well. And anything further on that? Hearing nothing, okay. Somehow I don't have, well, just a second here. I don't have the minutes of the September meeting here. No, I don't.
Are they attached?
Pardon me?
Are they attached in the one document?
Did you double check that?
Apologies, they probably just got, are they double electronically? Finance committee, what's me? These are just wrong, but this is the second portion of it.
No, it's not the September one. We just don't have it. It'll be brought to the next council meeting.
Yeah, we can bring that, I'll make it up.
So I'll be stroking, on September 22nd, 22, will be stroked off this motion. So I'll reread the motion. That the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting dated April the 20th and 25th, 2022 be received. We had a mover on that, Councillor Hines, second by Reeve Emo. All in favor? That's carried, thank you. That the minutes of the Fire and Emergency Management Committee meeting dated September 20, 2022 be received. And furthermore, that the monthly fire report for August 22nd, August 2022 be received. Mover, please. Councillor Hines, second by Councillor Jemison. Turn it over to Councillor Hines for that report.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. This was our meeting of September the 20th, and we reviewed the minutes of our August meeting, and then we moved into the meat of the meeting. And usually, the chief is here to review the monthly report, and this one being for August. Unfortunately, he is away on training today, so I'm going to be doing that. So I will get to that right now. And just for the August monthly report, 2 fires were reported in August with a total of 15 calls out overall. And the year-to-date, there has been 110 calls, which is a bit down from last year, which is a good thing in that scenario. And there is a total of 79 open burn permits that were issued to date in 2022, and 6 being actually issued in August. So people are abiding by that bylaw and getting their permits and making sure that the fire department has an opportunity to inspect where they're doing their outdoor burning vessels, that it doesn't cause an issue for any fires with their homes or whatever. For the month of August, the fire department focused on shore-based water rescue and rope and knot training, and this is particular training for when they have to hoist, whether it's a chainsaw or special heavy equipment, up to a higher level or roof. So there's certain knots, et cetera, that need to be practiced. And training for Renfrew Fire Department goes on all the time. So this report privies you to what they're working on now in their training, and they keep reviewing all of those things to keep updated. As notable, the fire department responded to a report of smoke coming from a second-story window in a multi-unit apartment building. The OPP were already there and provided an update in the situation. The building did suffer some smoke and water damage. However, the fire was contained to one room, and there were no personal injuries. The fire department was invited to attend the Toys for Kids charity hosted by the Templar Knights Motorcycle Club, and they do that on behalf of the Phoenix Center. So it just shows that our fire department is constantly working in charitable donations and where they can to be part of charities. Public education for the month of August focused on the importance of campus and dorm fire safety. It's a good reminder to all the colleges, universities, students that we're living at home and now moving away from home to ensure that they have working smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms, and such in their residence, be it a dorm or a private apartment. So basically, that was the report when it comes to the fire report for the month of August, and that is in your package. As part of the meeting, then we moved on to the training, and as I mentioned, Chief Guest is working on obtaining his Community Emergency Management Coordinator designation, and he recently attended the Basic Emergency Management course, and he found it very valuable and insightful and moving towards his designation. So he will be receive that designation when we're working with our emergency plan. Then we moved on to the request for tender for our half-ton truck, and that was released September 16th and closes on October the 7th. And the request was for a basic model truck with additional add-ons, as it will be a separate tender, so that we're getting a basic truck and the dealers aren't having to farm that work out, and then we're paying for that when they require additional, whether it's special communication boxes or equipment boxes in the back of that truck. The request for proposal for the fire hall roof was also, that tender was led on Friday, September the 16th, and is due back by October the 7th. The slope is for the scope is for the replacement of the fire hall house roof and the shingles, and we hope to receive 2 separate estimates looking at steel shingles and also architectural shingles. And also, we spoke of the fire department staffing with the request for a firefighter who is intending to retire December 31st. That was brought to council previously, and the chief would like to start moving forward with a request to have a qualified candidate. We do have a list of candidates from the previous recruitment, which was done in April, and so we're hoping to draw from that list, and those people are already pre-qualified to apply. So that was our meeting for September 20th, and we don't have any further meeting booked at this time. The new council will probably take on that task.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? It's carried, thank you. That the minutes of the Park, Recreation and Facilities Committee held July 19th and September 20th be received. Mover, please. Councillor Sidney, seconded by Councillor Hines. Turn over to Councillor Sidney for the reports.
Thank you. I'm actually probably not going to talk a lot about the July 19th meeting. I think everything has already come to council. So if anybody does have any questions, please let me know. But everything since July 19th to present on that has been to council or has been updated to council. So I'm just going to move over to Tuesday, September 20th. We did have an electronic meeting. I'll just highlight some few things. 7.1, the NHL Birthplace Museum requested to put an exterior sign up at the Mattaway Activity Center. Seeing as we are in the process of the expansion and a number of multi-users and tenants, the staff is going to go back and look at what is the best way to do signage so that we're not having, possibly 7 or 8 signs on the side of the building. Maybe we'll have more of a directory signage that points so that everybody has that. But staff is going to review signage and talk to all the tenants to see what works best for them. So that'll be coming forward to new council as well. 10.1, new staffing. It's just a little bit of a correction. There's already 2 customer service reps, CSRs. We did hire 2 new ones, as well as 3 new term maintenance laborers for Adam Mattaway and the rec center. That's just, it's all within the budget. We're just filling up backfills. We did receive a grant to put in a new play structure at Mattaway Park. Anybody that's familiar with Mattaway Park, the large play structure that is near the baseball diamonds, is its lifespan has ran its course, and we did receive a grant for that. Unfortunately, people were unable to install it this year due to, as we're all aware, things are backlogged and stuff, so that will be done in 2023. But we're talking a significant grant of upwards of $200 and some thousand, I believe it was, so that's quite the play structure. So looking forward to that. A really good news confirmation, we did receive a grant from the CSMARI, which I'm sorry, I don't remember what that stands for, but The grant is actually a community outreach as it relates to inclusion and anti-racism. The town's contribution to the project is already identified to fit into the 2022 budget. So that will be moving forward. I believe one of the first things is, and I don't want to put the CAO on the spot here, but I believe one of the priorities is going to be awareness training for staff and council to deal with inclusion and anti-racism. That's number one on the list. And what else do I have here? Just a quick update. I was speaking with Acting Director Wall today with the expansion, and as of right now, everything is positively moving forward, and we're seeing progress. So the expansion is still carrying on in a positive formation, and we're happy about that. So thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of things here, and in regard to the signage for the NHA, NHL Museum, I think they were looking to have some kind of just, even if it could be temporary now, and they may come back with that request, as, you know, I mean, it's going to be April before we're able to establish those signs, so something that, you know, that notes that the museum is within the arena, and they've had a lot of questions over the summer, and thank you very much to the Town Development Works Department for putting up the signs, the directional signs that they purchased. They're on most of the signs that have direction to the arena, so people are able to find it there, but when they get there, it would be good to have that. And originally, when that request came forward, I guess it was to have it on the building, but I can appreciate that having all of those signs together is a good idea, but maybe something temporary, whether it's on the door or whatever might be considered, and certainly we could put that request forward again to the committee. So thank you for at least looking at that. And the other thing was in regard to the pool agreement, my understanding is that it's still in the works, and that perhaps the CAO will be working with the town of Arnprior to establish that. I have had that question from people that we do have an agreement, and there are a lot of people that attend the Arnprior pool and are privy to the same price that the Arnprior folks pay because of that agreement. And it's like the agreement that we have with any other municipality where our recreation services are used by other communities. So it just really, I mean, it's still in place as it is, and just really hoping that that can get worked out for people. It's important. So thank you.
Yeah, so I don't believe to your first point about the signage, I don't believe the rec committee is going to be meeting again prior to the election. As chair of rec, I certainly don't have a problem with a temporary sign, but I can't speak on behalf of the committee as is. But I will talk to Acting Director Wall tomorrow and see if they can work something out and do a temporary sign. I think that's probably a good idea for the winter. And as far as the pool goes, the agreement, I know Director Hill has been working quite hard with trying to negotiate with the municipality of Arnprior, and there seems to be some little bit of roadblocks here and there, so I believe CAO Tremblay will be getting involved in on that, because it's an important thing, and we do want to keep the status quo, and I know what was proposed last was 50% with an unknown amount of how much that's actually going to be. So we didn't want to take that risk. So it is in the works. I know it seems to be long process, but it's not without Director Hill's efforts to get it resolved. So thank you.
So if I could just, in regard to the signage, thank you very much for offering that test, but I have spoke to the CAO, knowing that there probably isn't a committee meeting. We're in a funny time where do things go? But we send it to the head guy, and it'll get done. So anyway, thank you very much for that. I think he is working on that, but may correspond with you and Jordan. So thank you for offering that.
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that the chair's outreach to Mr. Wall would be helpful to sort out what that looks like in terms of the temporary signage. I just want to note both the pool agreement, but also the Wolves agreement, both are on our radar, and we hope to bring those forward in a timely fashion. The Wolves agreement should be close to completion. And the pool agreement, there were a number of options presented between staff, and the CAOs are involved now just to finalize it, and will likely come forward to council prior to the 2023 budget, the new council. So both of those agreements will be dealt with. But I appreciate if the chair is reaching out to Mr. Wall for the signage, that would be great.
Will do.
Going back a wee bit, I was asked at a committee level to talk to somebody in Iron Prior, and I did talk to the mayor. And at that particular time, he said that him and the CAO had suggested that they leave the 2022 fees as is, and then they would be working on a new plan for 2023. So that's where it stood from my point of view. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. Okay, that the minutes of the Police Service Board meeting held March 23rd and May 18th be received. Mover, please. Councillor Hines, second by Councillor Jemison. So turned over to Councillor Hines. You weren't at that meeting on the 23rd?
But that's okay.
It's okay? You're
I do
okay
know
with that?
about it. And I just must say that hopefully with the new council that they will request that minutes are more timely, and we do sometimes run into that in various committees and boards where we've already kind of dealt with things at the council table, and then the minutes come after. So we need to sort out for sure the process of that, you know, minutes from last month, are they dealt with by the committee and then come to council, or should they be coming to council, so that we at least know what's going on? And a lot of time those reports flow, and then we get the minutes after, as Councillor Sidney addressed with some of the minutes from the recreation. But having said that, hopefully we can move these along. These are 2 older minutes, and there was a meeting, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, and but nevertheless. So we certainly discussed a lot of information in regard to speeds bys and the speeding that's going on in town and the various complaints that we're getting, and you know, tried to come up with some solutions. Having said that, this was a March meeting, and council has already dealt with that. We have a pilot project going on in Otter Ridge and over in the development there, and so that's kind of, we did discuss it there, but council has moved on that already. And just in regard, we always review the finances, of course, of where we're at, and in regard to the budget that's provided by the municipality to the Police Services Board. We received the Detachment Commander's report, which highlights for us property crime, drug possession, violent crimes, where they're at, and what the statistics show in regard to how prevalent they are. In this case, the numbers were down, and also domestic disputes were down at that time. And we had a very vigorous discussion, I believe, that it was on false alarms that come into for calls for service. Also, we looked at the committee reports, or they would have looked at the committee reports in regard to the situational table, and that's a table that brings together various partners in the community, whether it's the health unit, the Ministry of Community and Social Services, the Phoenix Center, housing, all of those folks come together and try to deal with various cases that are going on, so that the referral is made, or the services that are required end up in the right places. So a very important part of the police services in the town of Renfrew. As you will remember, and this is something that's already passé, But as you will remember, the junior hockey team had flags up on the main street to promote safe driving, drinking and driving, just, you know, total safety. And the hockey players were interested in buying their own flags. They wondered what they could do, and that was a bit of a fundraiser. So that was that meeting. Then the next minutes that we have, and certainly because of COVID, they're not quite set up as well as we are to do Zoom meetings or the ability to do them with the within the number of people on the board. And so consequently, some meetings between March and May were missed because of COVID. And if there's nothing pressing, I mean, the detachment commander is certainly in touch with the chair on a weekly basis. Anyway, so this May meeting, we looked at the March minutes, and we also had a discussion in regard to the grants. So this information is somewhat a backup to what the town of Renfrew is already doing in regard to the rental of the space downstairs in the old police station and the renovations of such. It was reported that we did receive 2 grants. The first one is for a situational table at $98,000 over 3 years, and that will support the situation table that I had mentioned before. The table will be revamped to work more efficiently, and they're trying to model it somewhat after the Lanark and Leeds one, although we've had a very active and good participation one here. The second provincial grant is just a little bit over $1 million, and it goes over 3 years also, and that's to create the office down there as a community hub for staffing, education, training, social media, websites, office equipment, supplies, and such, and to pay for the lease of the building, which is what we're into with the renovations. And it's hopefully that this would be a connection center for people who require services, and they'll be able to be directed to the proper services that they required, whether it's addiction, mental health, sexual health, hate crimes. There'll be a place for people to go speak about it, get the information they need, and get the support that they need. We dealt with some correspondence in regard to a lawsuit that the OPP were dealing with, and it was reiterated again that it was certainly not anything to do with Renfrew. It was between the OPP and the Madawaska Council. And we also reviewed the financial report, and we received the detachment commander's report, again addressing some issues of speeding on Hall Avenue and various streets in Renfrew. And we noted also that the overall drug offenses are up by 150% right now, so the police are doing their work in regard to trying to monitor and control that. And we had a report in regard to the situational table, and that was the meeting. So some of those things have already been dealt with by this council, and we're moving right along whether we get the minutes or not.
Any questions, comments? Raglan Street South. Mover, please. Councillor Jamison, second by Councillor Sidney. Any questions or comments on this? Councillor Sidney.
Thank you. Yes, this was actually brought to my attention at the community information night last week. I guess bylaw had been in speaking to the owners of the eye clinic, and this is actually just a formality to have council approve the mural so that it can stay, and they're not required to remove it. I think I've heard a lot of positive feedback in regards to it, adding some vibrancy and stuff to our downtown, and a lot of people are really enjoying it. So it was very important that we did this one formality just so that they weren't required to remove it. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hines.
Yeah, I just want to say that if you do go and view it, it is in the alleyway, and it's great. I mean, it really makes that alleyway very vibrant, and it's kind of a fun mural to look at. And I think that when this kind of thing happens, it's just a matter of folks not knowing that that's part of a bylaw and very willing to come forward and ask for the permission that they would have if they hadn't known the bylaw was there. So nothing has been done in a way that they were trying to get around anything, but certainly this is great for Councillor Sidney to bring it forward and to be dealt with in this manner.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Revimo.
Just a quick question. With regards to the bylaw, I haven't seen the bylaw, so is there any, are there any obligations to maintain it or keep it in good repair? I'm not suspecting they wouldn't, but it's just as a question.
I believe there is provision in the bylaw, but I don't have it in front of me, and Planner Withers is not here. I think that's a question, though, that should be asked again when he is present at some time.
It's not urgent. Thanks.
Okay.
I believe there is. It's
Yes.
the same as the ones that are on the side of the library.
Right, yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, whereas the Federal Electoral Boundaries Commission for Ontario has proposed that the Township of Greater Madawaska be removed from the electoral riding of Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, and moved to electoral district of Lanark-Frontenac, which is currently named Lanark-Frontenac and Kingston. And whereas the Township of Greater Madawaska is in opposition to this proposal, and whereas the Township of Greater Madawaska is submitting a written proposal, a petition and objection of the electoral boundary change, and whereas the Renfrew Town Council desires to support the Township of Greater Madawaska in its efforts to remain in the Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke electoral boundary. Be it resolved that Renfrew Town Council supports the Township of Greater Madawaska opposition to the Federal Electoral Boundaries Commission for Ontario proposed removal of the Township of Greater Madawaska, removal from Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke electoral district. Mover, please. Revimo, second by Councillor Hines. Questions or comments? Revimo.
Comments. I understand the need for the government to re-look at and investigate change to electoral boundaries if there is a rational thought behind it. And in this instance, I can't see it. Greater Madawaska is, most of their traffic and their commerce and their healthcare all travels towards either Renfrew or Arnprior or Ottawa. It does not travel towards Perth. It certainly doesn't travel through the bush to Ampa and over into Hastings County or Frontenac. So it makes no sense. There is no tie there, and I think the disruptive nature of this proposal is such that a lot of our programs that are funded provincially come through federal dollars, and there are agreements in place. And it makes sense to keep the aggregate that we have now with the service lines, with the paramedics, with mutual aid with the fire departments, and other essential services. I think it makes sense to keep those in line. Now, those are not directly funded by the federal government. Some of them have been funded by program dollars to start with, and also some investment by federal and provincial dollars. But those are usually on the precondition that they're part of a larger system. and by pulling Greater Madawaska into another riding, I think that could be disruptive, and that could cause problems down the road as we try to gain greater efficiency with a lot of our services. So there doesn't seem to be any rationale for it. It seems to be made to accommodate a little bump in the Ottawa area, which they could hive that bump off and stick it into another riding and it wouldn't matter. The numbers, if I understand correctly, are for approximately 102,000 or 104,000. And by moving Greater Madawaska out and pulling in Algonquin Highlands, it's almost a zero. It's almost a zero sum. So the numbers don't change. There's no significant change that I can see that is of any benefit to the community, and I would hope the Boundary Commission listens to the submissions that will be made by Greater Madawaska and by the County of Renfrew, and understand by several residents in Greater Madawaska as I've had the opportunity to speak with them and provide them with some information. So I think there's a goodly number of submissions will be presented to the Commission. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Your Worship, if I may. Also, the Township of Greater Madawaska does have an online petition in which those in support of this motion and this general consensus can sign to be included as part of their proposal of opposition.
Thank you. I certainly agree with Revimo and every aspect of what he's saying there. It doesn't seem to make any common sense whatsoever for them to move into a different county. Just doesn't seem to add up whatsoever. Can you imagine the cost, to move from one jurisdiction to another? And, it's like you're just in, whatever they have to do as far as letterheads, et cetera, goes, and a new reporting system, new everything, and it makes no sense whatsoever. And Greater Madawaska is much closer to Renfrew County in many ways, as far as the shopping goes, as far as Revimo mentioned doctors go, as far as hospitals go, et cetera. So it just makes good common sense to keep them in Renfrew County. So I'm certainly supporting this. Councillor Hines.
Your Worship, I totally agree with that. Like, the people from Calabogie and Greater Madawaska area are very important to the town of Renfrew in regard to the services that they receive here and how close it is for them to come here, and they've always been a part of this. So I totally agree with you guys that it makes no sense at all. It's just, for them to have to drive to miles and miles to Ottawa to receive their services doesn't make any sense at all. Plus, they're very important to the county, as the Reeve can attest to.
We got to remember, too, geographically, we think of Greater Madawaska more like as a Calabogie area, but Griffith-Madawachian area is very important to the county as well, and just the travel time, et cetera. Just, I don't know why they would even be thinking of this, but anyway, that's the way it is. So, anything else? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, the Renfrew Town Council convened in closed session. I'm sorry. Any new or unfinished business? Councillor Sidney.
It's just a comment. I just received notification from the president of the BIA that the Santa Claus Parade will be stationary like last year. So just to follow up on Councillor Hines' comment.
Thank you. Any other new business? Hearing none? Okay. The Renfrew Town Council convened in closed session pursuant to the following section, Municipal Act 2001. Section 239-2K, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. More specifically, as it relates to its tenancy at 1 Innovation Drive. Mover, please. Councillor Jemison, second by Councillor Sidney. Is this the same issue we were talking about in past meetings?
Yes, it is.
Yes, well, I'll be declaring on that then, if you don't mind. Okay, all in favor? We are now in closed session. So we'll take a few minutes recess.
Oh, yeah.
Should have there, so.
So we are in open now, and rise and report that the closed session, there was direction given to staff to continue working to resolve an issue with regards to tenancy at Renfrew Innovation Center. And with that, seeing there's no further business, I could take a motion to adjourn. Councillor Jameson, second Councillor Hines.
We do have.
All those in favor?
Confirmatory?
Oh, I'm sorry, the confirmatory bylaw. Whoops, sorry. Okay. Okay. Move that bylaw 90-2022 being a bylaw to confirm. Your worship, you can go ahead and finish the confirmatory bylaw.
Okay.
So we can rise and report.
You steal my pen? Okay, we're back in open session?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The bylaw 90-2022 being a bylaw confirming the proceedings of the Council of Corporation Town of Renfrew be read first time and deemed to have been read a second time. Mover, please. Councillor Jemison, second by Revimo. All in favor? It's carried. Bylaw 90-2022 being a bylaw to confirm proceedings of the Council of Corporation Town of Renfrew read a third time be passed. Mover, please. Councillor Hines, second by Councillor Sidney. All in favor? It's carried. We do now adjourn. It is 8:48 and a half.
Should have noted that down.
Bye, Rob. Feel better.
You're up.